Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today I wasn't going to make a video, but I thought I would bring you guys along and just show you what I'm doing here. So I decided to make a slight modification to my electrical wiring, and what is behind that is I noticed, so it is late November of 2021, and earlier this year, back in February, you'll see all the videos on my channel of the Snowmelt, the electrical system overview that I did, and all of that. I really was only running the Snowmelt. I did turn the radiant heat on for a little bit to play with, but I never really had it going like all winter last year. The system wasn't brought up and made operational until the end of January. February was pretty much all Snowmelt. I did a little bit of testing with the radiant in March, and by then it was getting too warm. It was already starting to warm up, and we just turned it off and never used it. So this fall, about a month ago, right before the end of October, things were starting to get cold, and particularly in the garage, and rather than turn on the resin or unit heaters on a thermostat and set them to 58 like I normally would, I decided let's try to strictly use the radiant. So I turned the radiant zone on, so I turned that switch on, which powers up both of these, but I didn't really want the staple up running yet. You know, it's still it was still in the reaching into the 50s during the day. It wasn't getting that cold at night yet, and we just didn't want the floors and all of that to be on yet. So I shut that pump off with my override switch there, and to stop the Belimo valve from opening, I just turned the aquastat way down so that it would never call. And this has been running now for about a month. It's keeping the garage at a very comfortable like 60, 61 degrees with an outdoor temperature, you know, in the upper 20s. So it's perfect. It works great. Now, a few days ago, today is November 30th. I think it was Saturday or Sunday. It might have been Saturday. We had our first snowfall here in Buffalo, and I decided to turn on the Snowmelt. And I did do a time lapse and all of that, and I did take some startup footage, so I'll post all that if I haven't already by the time I put this one up. But anyway, what I noticed was right now the radiant, with the current settings that I have it at, it runs for 14 minutes every hour and 45 minutes. So it just actually finished a cycle. We're pretty much at 8 o'clock, so around 9:45 it's going to come on again and run for 14 minutes and turn off, and it won't run again for another hour and 45 minutes. And it pretty much does that like clockwork. It does run 14 minutes, seems to be its exact run time all the time, but as it gets colder out, the distance, that hour and 45 sometimes will shrink down to an hour and 30, an hour and 20, as the garage and the basement are losing heat quicker because it's colder outside. That off time will shrink. But what happened on Saturday was I had the Snowmelt running. The radiant had just completed a cycle, so it was going to be off for the next hour and a half. Well, if you've watched my other videos, you would know that when I first turn on the Snowmelt, it can take sometimes between an hour and a half to 2 hours for that initial run before the return temps hit 80 and it starts cycling. Okay, and what happened was I fired up the Snowmelt, let it run. It ran for an hour. It was slowly bringing the return temperatures up. I had 80, then 90, and then I was getting close to 100 going out. So everything was working perfect, just as I dialed it in back in February. And then after an hour and 35 minutes, the radiant kicked on. And normally that's not a problem, but what I noticed was normally when this radiant is on by itself, it gets a supply temperature of like 125 degrees. You know, it can take all of the heat that these two units are putting out at 140, and it can steal all of that from the flat plate heat exchanger and put it all into the radiant zone. Okay, and what happened when the Snowmelt came on, well, now that supply is being split across the two, and instead of the driveway getting 100, the driveway was getting maybe 95, which isn't a big deal. You know, the driveway is the driveway. Who cares? It will melt. It's a lot warmer than 32. So, but the house was only also getting about 95, 96 degrees. So, now instead of running for 14 minutes, it was running for, both of them pretty much equaled out. And it was taking like an hour for the radiant to get up to temp. Instead of 14 minutes, instead of giving it 125 degree glycol, I'm only giving it 96 degree glycol. And then same thing, So what I found was that when the radiant was on, it was really, the snowmelt was causing the radiant to not really work as efficient. And at the same time, the radiant was causing the snowmelt not to turn off after the normal hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours, like it normally is. It ran for like 3 hours. So I started playing with some things. There's a couple things I could do. I could turn the temperature up on the units. Right now, they're set to 140 right now. I could bump that up. These will go up to, I want to say 180, but then you got to worry about different, venting and all of that. And, I really like 140 because that gives me return temperatures coming back that are lower than the dew point of natural gas. So you get a really good condensing. You really get the most you can efficiency-wise out of these units. I really don't want to turn them up into the 150s, 160s, or higher. I was really trying to avoid doing that. So I started thinking, how can I fix this without changing the temperature? And what I came up with was I could do some sort of a priority setup. And what I've come up with is I had a couple of extra relays. That's these black ones here. Okay, and when I wired all of this, I wired it so that when a switch is on, like the radiant switch, or we'll do the snowmelt for now, right? Okay, so the snowmelt, here's this cable, and in here is a ground, a hot, and a neutral. And those all run over and into this box. And the hot powers the aquastat, it powers the pump. So whenever that switch is on, the pump and the aquastat are on. I did put a cutoff switch on the front so that I can turn the pump off if I want to and not circulate the zone and just have the aquastat on or whatever. Okay, and then when the aquastat determines it needs heat, then it energizes the output side of the aquastat, and that turns on the three-way valve, and it sends a signal back to the box to go through a relay to turn on the primary loop pump. And it's as simple as that. So this cable that runs to each zone is 4-conductor cable, and in every one is a black wire. The black wire is hot. Whenever the switch is on, I have hot power coming back. The red is whenever the zone is calling. So whenever the aquastat says, hey, I need heat, this red wire is energized, which turns on the relay and allows the power to go from here to the primary loop pump, okay? The other 2 wires in there, one is a ground, the orange is the ground, the blue is my neutral. Now, the neutral, I probably could have gotten away with. I mean, you can pull a neutral. These are all on the same breaker here and everything. So I could have pulled a neutral from even, this pump. I could have pulled a neutral from anything in here. Same thing with the ground. But with the ground, I'm using the neutral to power the relays. So the neutral is actually being used. Okay, so whenever the snowmelt zone turns on, the red line's energized, my neutral's here, it closes that relay and allows the power from the brown wire back here to come and turn on that pump. All right, the orange or the ground is not being used at all. As you can see, the orange comes in and goes into this little clip terminal bar on the bar here, and it goes nowhere. There's nothing hooked up to it because I really don't have anything to ground in here. So I thought, okay, how can I fix this without totally rewiring the whole thing and getting into all that? Because it's actually snowing pretty good right now. There's about a ½ inch on the driveway. We're supposed to get another inch today. I want to turn this on and I want to test this and see how it works. So what I decided to do was I opened up my aquastat. I cut my orange wire, okay, off the ground. It was soldered and wired into all of the grounding, and that's what sent the ground back to there. I don't need it as a ground anymore. I also removed the black hot wire, I don't know if you guys can see that, the black hot wire right there that powers the Belimo valves. That I used to go right to the output side of the aquastat. Okay, I disconnected that. So all I'm going to do is connect the orange and the black right here, solder them, put a wire nut on it, close this all back up, and everything will still function normally, but now the only way that that Belimo will open is if it gets a signal back from the orange wire. Okay, then what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to remove this orange wire from this ground. I'm going to hook it to this relay, and then I'm going to jump from the bottom over this relay, and then I'm going to take my red that comes back from the Snowmelt zone that's on only when the system is calling, and bring it in. And so what that'll do is these relays have normally open and normally closed contacts down here. So if you wire to this bottom one, you will get power anytime that the relay is on. Anytime that there's power coming in up here, when the relay is closed, you'll get power on the bottom lug. Otherwise, anytime the relay is open, you'll get power on the top one. So I'm going to wire everything to the top one so that as long as these relays have no power to them, the power will flow right through and back to the three-way valve, and it'll function just like it always has. Then what I'm going to do is tap off these two relays for the staple up and the Snowmelt, and also feed these relays with the neutral and the hot. Okay, and how that'll work is now anytime one of the radiant zones calls for heat, it will not only activate this relay to turn on the primary loop pump, but it'll activate this relay, and all that's doing is breaking the circuit. And when it breaks the circuit, the Belimo three-way valve for the Snowmelt now no longer gets power, so it'll spring loaded, it'll close. And what that'll do is, all at the same time simultaneously, whenever any one of these needs heat, this will come on and start to open, this will spring shut. The pump will stay on, the aquastat will stay on, it'll still be calling, but basically what I'm doing is I'm giving the house heat priority over the driveway. Once the house zones are satisfied, that they'll come on, they'll get their full 125 degrees for 14 minutes. The driveway, it probably won't even phase the driveway to not run for 14 minutes. I mean, it'll make that up very quickly. As soon as the house is satisfied, the aquastat will turn off. The signal going to those relays for both the primary loop pump and the signal that I've jumped over to this relay will turn off. The relay will open, and now the signal will be allowed to flow through again, so this Belimo valve will start to open up again all automatically. The primary loop pump will stay on because it's still going to be calling on this zone. The call will never go away. So hopefully that makes sense. That's what I'm working on right now. I'm going to try to get this done here in the next 10-15 minutes, and then I'll set the camera up and hopefully show you guys a video of it melting, and I might even bring you back at some point and show you exactly how it works down here. So again, one of these things I wasn't going to make a video, I just kind of started doing it, and I thought, some of you might be interested in this, so why not just I'll just pull the GoPro out and explain it. If this isn't your thing or you don't really care, then this video isn't for you. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll bring you back. I'll let you know how it works out. Okay guys, thought I'd bring you back and show you how we made out here. So I have the multimeter set on continuity. Okay, so that will go off as we I can set this up. I don't know if I can, but if you guys can see this, how can I do this? So the way I wired it was I jumped off of the hot and neutral off of the relays for the primary loop pump and just jumped them, the hot and the neutral, over to these relays. These two I added. And then the power comes in from the Snowmelt on the red line, which is only energized when there is a call for heat on the Snowmelt. So when the aquastat has it energized, and then it jumps over and also turns on the primary loop pump here. So right now, if I touch this terminal and it comes out of the bottom here, normally closed, goes up, goes into the normally closed, and then out the top on the orange wire, and the orange wire is what I hooked up to the Belimo over there. So right now nothing's on, there's no power to anything. I shut it all off because I was working in here. Okay, so right now, since the relays are both open, I should be able to touch here, and if I can do this with one hand, I can touch here on the top, and I'm going to set you here for a second. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to touch here on the bottom. Okay, same thing here then, and then same thing over here on the top. And my wires are getting all, hold on a second. So if I touch this to the top, you guys can see that? You see where I'm touching? So right now the signal is allowed to go in and through both relays and out to the three-way valve for the Snowmelt. So assuming no call for radiant, the power would pass right through like normal and we'd be good to go. So I'm going to turn the radiant back on right now. And I don't know that it'll fire. I mean, it still hasn't been an hour and a half, but when you first fire up these Delta T pumps, they do a start cycle. I don't know if you guys can see that. It says start cycle there. And it really ramps up to get the fluid moving so that it can get a good temperature reading on the probes. So that might move enough fluid through quickly enough to get the return down where it will kick off the heaters. Now I do have the primary loop pump feed off, so we'll turn that back on there so that it actually can fire the heaters. But the big test will be, we'll check for continuity on those two lines for the Snowmelt Belimo when the radiant's on, and it should not get through. It should be cut because the relays have closed, and now the power is being applied to the bottom terminal instead of the top terminal. So let's see what we got here. We're still in our start cycle, and then I can set up I can turn on the Snowmelt too and show you that it will start pumping, but it won't add any heat. It won't trip the valve because the heat's on. So let's see what we get here. We're reading 69 coming back up here. Supply and return of 69, but this is still showing 72. That's the sump pump noise. You can hear it. It's definitely spinning up. See what happens with that. But anyway, yeah, I think this will work well. I think this will let the house take over and get the heat that it needs, and then once the house is done, the relays will open back up again, and then I guess it would be normally open then, not normally closed. Yep, so this relay right now is getting power. That one has a light in it. That's fancy. These other ones don't have lights. It's kind of cool. These are the two new ones I added. Okay, so now that that's open, that Belimo valve is opening. We're gonna pump some heat into the house right now. I should be able to do that same test with the continuity tester again that we just did carefully because I have power in here now. But if I touch this going out to this coming in, no beep, because this relay is open right here. So if the Snowmelt was on, it would have just cut the power to the Belimo three-way valve, and now no more heat would be allowed to the Snowmelt because the house is going to take it all for the time being. Okay, see how that works? But these two black ones are the ones I added. So right now there's power coming in on the red that's firing both of these relays. One is for the primary loop pump, the other one is is to shut off the Belimo valve and give the house priority. So if I take my continuity testers here and I go from here, I don't know if I can do this with one hand, I'll try. If I go from here at the top to here at the bottom, hear that? I do have power, and that's because this relay is not on. The other radiant zone is not on right now. So the power's coming in, it's allowed to pass through, but then it stops right here at this relay. So hopefully that makes sense. I had the extra relays. I had bought them when I built this whole thing. I had bought them on eBay, you know, a pack of 5 or whatever, and I only used a few of them. So I had a couple of extra 120 volt AC relays kicking around, and yeah, I just thought that was an easy way to fix the problem without having to rewire the whole thing. And you know, the ground, the orange wire, the ground coming back as far as this side really doesn't do anything. Now over here the ground does pass through and go to the primary loop pump, but that's separate. That's just for providing power to that pump. So yeah, I'm happy. I think that'll work out well. I think that the house will always get what it needs, and then the Snowmelt can get what's left, and that's fine. And the Snowmelt will have plenty of time to catch up. I mean, the house only runs for, like I mentioned, 14 minutes, 13 minutes. So, you know, let the Snowmelt get what's left, but the house gets what it needs first. So I basically just built a zone controller with priority on my own without buying an expensive Takeo or whatever unit. I just made one with some relays. So anyway, I don't know if you guys find this useful. You know, give me a like and subscribe, and there'll be more coming. But I'm gonna go set this up to do another time lapse because we're getting some good snow. And then maybe what I'll do is, if I'm down here, the GoPro will be time lapsing, but I'll take out my phone, and if when the Snowmelt is melting, the radiant comes on, I'll try to catch it so I can show you exactly how what we just did is gonna work. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay guys, so I just happened to catch the switch over here. I heard the units were already on because the Snowmelt was on, and has not reached 80 degrees yet, and I'm on my iPhone. That's why the display is a little different. But I could hear the Snowmelt valve closing. Excuse me. And then I heard this valve slowly opening, and the pumps never turned off because power is still being applied by the aquastat. By both of them now are calling, so the primary loop pump never turned off. But because of the way we rewired it, now the house needs heat. The Snowmelt is now bypassing, and it's still 75, so it's going to keep bypassing that 75 degree fluid for the next 14 minutes while the house heats. But now at least the house is able to get 125 degrees, whereas before, with both of them calling, you know, the house could only get 95. Same with the Snowmelt. So yes, the supply has dropped on the supply side of the Snowmelt because it's bypassing, it's not picking up any heat. But basically it takes longer for the Belimo valves to open than it does for them to close. For them to close, it takes like 10 or 15 seconds. It's pretty quick. To open, it takes a good 30-45 seconds. So what happened is the Snowmelt valve closed before the Belimo valve could fully open, and the heaters then started circulating in their primary loop, and the heater saw 131 degree water coming back to it, so they modulated all the way down, and I believe one of the units might have even shut off. So then once the radiant Belimo fully opens, it starts to let that return of that 70 degree glycol coming back from the house, 69. This one says 71, 70 degree. And then they start to remodulate and figure out where they need to be. So right now we're burning 93,000 BTUs, 116 coming in. And as soon as the radiant is happy and this is back up to temperature, it will turn off, and that will allow the electrical current back through those relays that we wired this morning, and it will allow the Snowmelt valve to open again. So you'll start to see that come back. So we're already down to 71, 70 again on the Snowmelt. So it'll be interesting to watch how this works. I mean, it's definitely cooling itself off because it's just circulating that cold slab, but that's okay. The house will run for 14 minutes and then the Snowmelt will catch back up. So I'll keep you posted, let you know how it works. Okay guys, so I just caught the end of that radiant cycle. Alright, so the radiant is now satisfied. So that just went into bypass, and the Snowmelt is slowly opening now. Now you'll see the BTUs on these units drop because it's cycling through its primary loop, because that valve isn't open all the way yet, so it can't get that cold glycol. So now you're starting to see some of it come back through. BTUs are ramping back up, incoming temperatures going back down. So we're starting to pump heat back out to the driveway. And everything is pretty much automatic. The tankless units are self-regulating and self-modulating, so everything just does what it needs to do. So that valve is open. We had dropped down, I want to say, to 55 coming back. Now this is still during its initial heat up too. The driveway's not up to temperature yet, but we're already back up to 58. We were at 65, 70. I want to say we were around 70 when the radiant started calling. So we're at 57 now. I mean, yeah, so that worked perfect. I mean, the house needed heat. The Snowmelt went on hold for 15 minutes while the house called, got its heat, the house turned off, and the three-way valve for the Snowmelt opened back up. So basically the radiant zones have priority, and that's exactly what I wanted. And now we're right back to where we were before the house needed heat. So I would say that's a successful, that was a successful modification to the wiring, just to give us a little bit of priority there. And I think that'll work out nice. I mean, I'd have to really sit down and do the math as to whether it saves anything, because now the Snowmelt has to catch back up versus just letting them both run for an extra 2 hours and then nothing, the house isn't satisfied, the Snowmelt isn't satisfied, everything's calling. I don't know. It seems better to me to keep the house happy and let the Snowmelt get what's left. I mean, that's comfort-wise, that's seems to make more sense. But anyway, let me know what you think, and yeah, I'll wrap this one up. I would say that was a successful modification. Thanks for watching.